Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I'm Will Shick, and once again, we're just starting right on the beautiful miniature who's the star of the actual show. Today we have Magneto, the Master of Magnetism, who's going to be coming your way next. What is that? Friday, the 13th. So, lucky 13. All of the X-Men and Brotherhood characters that we've been showing off over the last month plus will be releasing to your local game stores, so hope you're very excited. It's been a big road to get here. I can't wait to see what the community and all of you all do with these awesome characters, and hopefully you'll be able to get some games in as we move forward through the holidays, and of course stay safe while doing so. So I have my Magneto, and today I set forth myself the challenge that we're going to do white suit Magneto from Marvel now. So this is the more heroic color scheme of Magneto when he tries to make amends for his past transgressions in terms of mutant supremacy. And I believe that it is his current outfit as well, still in the Powers of X, House of X, new Hickman run, the new X-Men series that's going on right now in Marvel. He's kind of shifted back to that white hero costume, so we're going to do that today. I started by doing my Zenith Prime, although I went really heavy on my light gray, so you can see there's almost no black really showing through on this miniature at all. So we have a little bit of those darker colors in the big shadows and recesses, but I wanted to make sure that we had a really nice, smooth surface of gray to work with. We're going to start, as you do with white, in working in our shade colors first. So I'm going to start with Rainy Gray, which is a really nice kind of warm gray color. Has a little bit of green to it to kind of give it that nicer warmth. And we're just going to mix this up into a wash, and we're going to start working this down into the shades. So cracks and crevices on the suit. And then we're going to slowly build up because white is defined by its shadows. So you want very little pure white on the miniature itself. You just want to use pure white very sparingly on the super highs, and in order to get really nice white that's pretty easy to paint. The big trick is to simply work on the shadows. So I'm going to make this pretty thin using water and some glazed medium. And then we're just going to start working this in the shadows, doing a little bit of blending with our extra brushes. And we're just going to have a good time. So, everybody out there had a wonderful weekend, stayed safe and secure and healthy no matter where you are in the world. It's very rainy here, so that kept it really easy to stay inside. So again, what I'm doing with this rainy gray is I'm kind of just looking to hit the areas that are going to be in really deep shadow. So the back of the cape obviously is going to have a lot of shadow to it. You can see that it's more of like a tint, so it's almost like a glaze in terms of just how thick I'm trying to layer it on. I'm not trying to overwhelm the colors on top. I want that Zenith Prime highlight to really help. And as I go, I'll probably blend out a little bit as I look at places where I want that to be a little darker, a little lighter. And I can kind of play with it to make sure that I'm getting a nice effect. So I can grab my second brush and I can kind of blend out those shadows to make sure that we're getting nice transitions. Too dark. There we go. I know that Josh posted Magneto's card last week. Was it last Thursday, last Friday? Maybe last Friday. Days kind of blur together, I feel like, when it comes to this stuff, but obviously a really exciting character, and much like our good friend Thanos, another Will Pagani initial design. Pagani really likes doing the big, expensive, scary characters, so you start to hit that 6th threat point, and it really becomes kind of his wheelhouse, so we let him take the initial stab at Magneto and do the initial designs. He came up with a monster of a card. It was actually so big it wouldn't actually all fit. So that caused some fun challenges, but we got those figured out. I'm really happy with where Magneto came out. He's a very fun character, and I think a really great representation of this iconic villain on the tabletop. So certainly well worth all of his points. So I'm just kind of taking this and I'm going carefully into those cracks and crevices where like his muscles are, because he's got his big strong muscle suit. And I'm just kind of going to blend with that second brush to make sure that I'm maintaining some of those highs, and I'm pushing that shadow into the real big recesses. Let's go over here where there's less light. We'll hit those a little heavier. But this is really just all about defining kind of those places where I want the shadows to be starkest, and then pulling it out over that gray, and then using that gray as a transitional. The gray primer is kind of a transitional step where I can build up my colors and get more to where I want in terms of my white. There are a lot of really good ways to kind of achieve this very quickly. We could have done just a full wash and like shaded everything down and then picked our whites back out, because of course you want that top white to be really nice and not murky. So no matter what you did, you should always go back over and kind of reclaim those areas of white at the tops where you'd get those zings of like close to pure white or more white. Using that blending brush to kind of smooth those transitions and make things work a little better is also really great too. You definitely go through and do kind of like a more traditional heavy wash, and then just go back through and layer highlight everything up if you wanted to. And I'll be using this rainy gray as kind of like my base foundation for everything going forward. So as I build up my whites, I'm going to use it mixed in with my white levels so that I always have that tie back to that shade, and that's just going to tie all those colors together. It's always great when you're mixing colors to always use whatever your last step was as part of that highlight step. So even if you have colors that go stage wise together in like a paint line or something like that, like the scale definitely has some step colors where it's like, oh, this color clearly is meant to highlight that color before it. Always add a little bit of that original color back in, and you're just going to find that your color transitions are going to be a lot smoother, and they're going to make a lot more sense, because you're going to have that foundation that you started with. It's definitely a trick that can work really great, especially when you're doing a lot of layer highlighting and stuff. Can really make the difference. So yeah, Josh has been all over the place though. He's been showing off tactic cards. I think all of the tactic cards from the November releases have been shown, and the amazing artwork there and what they bring to the table. We've seen all the character cards by this point. So like I said, hopefully everyone's jazzed to get these X-Mans and other mutants on the table. Add them to your other rosters. A lot of really great potential there as well. Just going to come in and make some pretty big impacts. I know that I expect to see a lot of Wolverines joining his Avenger buddies from the comics, or at the very least teaming up with some Steve Rogers. It's definitely a power team up from the comics I love to do. Having Wolverine square off against Hulk, bringing Wakanda and Storm together to kind of replicate the time that Panther and Storm were married before that was annulled following the events of AVX. So lots of Lots of fun potential and crossover. The universe just opens up in such a big way that I'm really excited about when it comes to these characters. Kind of what is happening. So what I'm kind of doing is I'm just using that secondary brush to pull my colors after they cool down and stretch them up. So I know I want it to get lighter up top. And so this is kind of just like a really cheap two-brush blending where I'm not spending a ton of time worrying about the blends because they're like really dark and I'm going to touch them anyway. But it keeps that transition a little smoother and lets me cheat it out just a little bit before I go back over. Mutant Genesis event, I can, although I can tell you that the Mutant Genesis event I don't know where that information came from. I think it's like really old info that never quite got addressed. So there is no Mutant Genesis kit or organized play event for the 13th. So due to the events of COVID and some other like scheduling things, the next organized play kit is early next year. There's nothing else kit-wise slated for 2020 due to the holidays and everything else that kind of like ran into, and then just some production challenges and stuff. So that Mutant Genesis kit that people have talked about, it's not actually a thing. It doesn't even exist. But there will be a very fun and exciting event that'll kick off 2021. I think everyone will be very excited. It will tie back, spoiler I guess, it will tie back into the X-Men and some cool stuff that we're doing with the next wave, which will be coming out next year, of our mutant characters. Because remember, like we talked about at Gen Con, there is a little bit of a gap between the kind of the arrival of the X-Men to Crisis Protocol and then our follow-up to them, which will be next year. And that early kit will kind of refocus on them and bring some pretty fun stuff to light. So if you're wondering why you haven't seen anything on Mutant Genesis, that's why. It's not actually it's not a thing I could tell you about because it's not a real thing. Is anybody appearing in other affiliations? Well, I don't know. Josh, can I say anything about that? Sounds like a marketing man's call as to what's going on there. But as people are pointing out in the chat, obviously the affiliation system is designed to allow for a lot of growth and new potential. Give them the lowdown. I liked how it was like give them, and I was like, give them what? So the affiliation system is obviously designed for a lot of flexibility. It's designed for a lot of growth because we know we want to touch a lot of the Marvel Universe and the characters, and depending on who and when and what, it's really difficult and kind of impossible from the start to create an affiliation card that covers everything. So we made the decision right away to have an affiliation card system where the cards cover everything that is coming out in the short term, so the things that you can kind of expect that will be around within a couple of months of release or things like that. But they don't cover everything that we have planned or are even working on at the time, because we're working on pretty big batches right away. And so then, of course, the affiliations get expanded, they get changed. And another big consideration about this is, we want to surprise everybody. We want to have cool reveals. I think everyone can agree that, it's really exciting to see those surprise reveals at Gen Con or even online and stuff, and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was coming. That's amazing. And so part of how we handle the affiliation cards is also akin to that. You know, we want to make sure that we have fun things to reveal and things to show off, and we're not making people wait forever or feel like something's incomplete because we put a name on an affiliation card that we know is coming, but it's not coming for, you know, 6 months or something like that. So all that long rant is to say that when you see an affiliation, you should always know that it's never complete. They're always growing. They're always going to expand eventually because there are characters to be added and places to go, and the game is designed to allow that to happen. In regards to the characters coming out next Friday, what can you expect to see from affiliations? Well, I can tell you that several of those characters are going to wind up in the Avengers. And if you read any of the Avengers run where those characters were there, you'll probably know. So Wolverine, of course, is going to wind up in Avengers, as most people have expected. Storm is going to be in Avengers. Beast is in Avengers. So all of the, obviously the big name mutants who have been part of that team are going to be included in there. Storm is, I'm happy to say, represented in Wakanda, even though they're no longer together. This Storm that we were kind of working with and the timeline in which she's kind of based on very much like is part of that Wakanda timeline and when she was part of it, and we also really wanted to include her in Wakanda because I think she brings some fun stuff to that affiliation. So she is Wakanda affiliated as well and will be on the new updated affiliation list, and she's a blast to run in that affiliation as a fantastic 3-point option for them that gives them a bit more depth to the roster options, and of course opens up a lot of potential. Several of our Brotherhood characters are going to wind up in Cabal, just to kind of reflect the fact that they do partner up with the Marvel big bads quite a bit, you know. So Magneto will be included in Cabal, Mystique is in Cabal, Sabretooth is in Cabal. So that opens up some fun options there, and then there are a couple others that I'll leave as surprises as well. But so I think we're pretty much done with this initial shade. I'm just going to hit inside his hand a little bit. Get over here to this. So we're kind of a little messy, but you can already see how we're starting to define that white really well with that rainy gray. And so now, I think I might go through, and I'm going to take a little black glaze from Vallejo. I'm going to mix it into that rainy gray just to give it a little more depth of color, a little more darkness. And the reason I'm using that black glaze is because it works really well with a really thin, with a lot of glaze medium and a lot of water, because it's really thick and kind of chunky. And I want this to really stretch out and be only in the deepest cracks and crevices, just to kind of add that extra level of shade. So like we're really talking about like just getting in between these muscles and like around these areas of like extreme shadow where the lines are. And by mixing it into that rainy gray, again we kind of maintain all these colors to come together, which makes them feel really nice. But this is like the deepest folds in the cloak. And we can always go back and add extra shadow too, but I just want to use a little bit of this to kind of, especially help define that musculature. This is going to make the next highlighting stage and stuff just go so much smoother and so much nicer. Oh, Atomic Mass Games Twitch, run by Josh, just dropping spoilers in there. Yep, the defenders do earn themselves a Wolverine, since apparently we're not about keeping secrets anymore. And of course, there are a lot of affiliations yet to come and things that are coming out. You know, another big consideration about affiliations, like I said, we don't want to necessarily put things on the print card that are really far away or that we want to keep as kind of big reveal surprises. There's also a lot of consideration given to some affiliations about how do we create affiliations that allow a lot of cross promotion. Obviously, building rosters is an important part of the game experience if you decide to play that way. And so having good crossover potential between characters is something that we take into account as well when choosing and designing characters and stuff. So, you know, it's never a bad thing, I think, as a player to see crossover options and when they work narratively within the world and how teams have been set up and stuff, then we really want to reflect that. And so that's why you see, you know, the Cabal and MCP is kind of a unique Cabal. They're using a name that has been used many times in the comics for a lot of different groups. But with our Cabal, we definitely wanted to make sure that it had room for some of the eviler mutants to take part of, to kind of reflect, again, that idea that in comics you've seen characters like Magneto and Red Skull and others that may not be in the game yet come together and work towards a common end for times, or try to organize things according to their own whims. So all of this stuff is kind of taken into account to make the world and the game feel as narrative and as fun and as sandboxy as possible. Well, you know, opening up fun choices and options and things for players to explore. But anytime you look at an affiliation card and you think, oh, that's it, well, you should never think that. That's never it. There's always more. It's just a matter of time. Feeling pretty good about this. So we kind of deepened up some of those shadows just a little bit. Just add a little extra layer to it. Now, I'm going to shift over and start doing our highlights. Alright, so we're going to shift over and we're going to go to we're going to use white sands. So we're going to use white sands today, which looks really yellow under my light, but if you could see it, is more of like a really eggshelly kind of white. I'm going to mix in a bit of that with my rainy gray, because again, I want to maintain that kind of like smooth transition. And I'm not going to use a ton, but I'm going to use a little bit just for this first level of rainy gray in there, and that's just going to help tie things together a little nicer. And I'm going to thin it out with a little bit of water, because this stuff likes to be a little thicker. And then we're just going to get set, and we're just going to start building stuff out. December releases. I don't know. Josh, what do you say? We talked about this beforehand. Should I just tell them to pay attention tomorrow? There is, if nothing else, a lot more information coming. Tell them, go ahead. Oh. So there will not be any new releases for December. We are going to take the month off. Partly just as a studio, we wanted to have kind of like a month of just breather, and then also for the community and everything else. You know, we've thrown a lot at folks over the last year, and a lot of it's been amazing and exciting, but we decided that just having that month of like enjoying December, enjoying the holidays that happen around it, having a moment to just appreciate everything that we've done over the year and that you all have worked on and hobbied on and gotten to play with, and maybe give you some more time to play with that stuff, was going to be a really great idea and kind of a nice way to transition into the following year. So that doesn't mean that we don't have anything coming for you all. We have some cool December treats, some gifts, if you will, that will hopefully let that little bit of no new releases become even more exciting, because you're going to have some fun new ways to try out those things that you've been collecting over the year and painting. So there'll be some fun new game content and stuff coming, but there won't be any new characters. So we're taking a little bit of a break until the start of 2021. So there you go. You know all the secrets. All the secrets are being revealed today. It must be November. Must be a new month. No new releases until you paint all your models. I don't know if I can. I think that's a little too. That's a little too democratic, I think. How about until Dallas paints all of his models? Dallas can paint all of his miniatures. Because I don't think any of us have models. We have miniatures. But, or we could count, you know, if it was me, we'd be good. Thankfully, between streaming and everything else, I've managed to stay on top of it for the most part. Of course, I don't really have time to do anything else. Between all the awesome work I get to do on everything, but certainly the streaming has helped immensely. Just getting this hour every week to hang out with you all and chat and paint and apparently discuss spoilers and stuff. Very exciting. So again, just to kind of come back to what we're doing painting wise, we're just kind of going through and doing our layers. Our layer highlighting with that first batch of white. Keeping our paint nice and thin. And we're just kind of building up layers like you would with any layer highlight. If you were doing natural layer highlighting, using that secondary brush to kind of blend and smooth out our transitions a little bit. And I'm just looking for those really high points on the muscles. Not worrying about getting like a lot of coverage, because again, I want those shadows to be really bold and strong. But like especially like where, you know, the bicep is bulging because Magneto does some lifting, or I think more potentially he wears one of those like little kid Halloween costumes. That's what I always kind of figured. I was like, how is this super old man, unless he's using his magnetism powers to make himself so bulky? Like, how's he look this good? What's his workout secret to success? So somebody I think once said like, he probably just wears a padded costume. I was like, oh, that's genius. Kind of like Greco-Roman armor and stuff, you know, just have the muscles sculpted on, then you don't actually need the muscles, you just look impressive. You look Adonis-like. Although I think they've had some frames with him out without the shirt on, and I mean, he's still cut as heck. So the benefit of having superpowers, you know, you just get that super cut bod all the time. Yeah, this was a really fun, I think the Magneto now, you know, costume as it's kind of generally known, if you go searching for it on Google and stuff, and another time period. It was a really cool design. I think we'll put a couple of spins on it. I don't know if I want to do black lines or if I want to do more of like a blue metallic line. Just kind of give it a little twist, but it's a pretty neat design. And like I said, it was Dallas and I always kind of joke about each other about how I always force Dallas to do the white costumes on his streams, because he's made the claim before that he really likes painting white, and I've made no secret of the fact that I really don't love painting white. I find it to be a pretty challenging color, so this is a moment of trust between us, stream, about how I'm not going to move super fast. This is definitely going to be a slower slower process for me. Um, it might not be quite as exciting as, say, painting, Spooky Toad in an hour, or Beast in an hour, or some of the other things that we've been able to knock out in one stream. But I thought it was a good challenge, and I just kind of wanted to show that, everybody has their moments of progression, and sometimes the only way to break through a barrier is to really just set yourself the challenge and be like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. And I told everyone I was going to do white Magneto, and now I have to do white Magneto. So we're going to struggle. We're going to make some mistakes. It may not be everything that we hoped it would be, but in the end, we're going to have a really awesome finished miniature that is going to be yet another step on our hobby journey. And as I've talked about with yellow before, which I really disliked painting by forcing, quote unquote, forcing myself to do more in yellows and learn tricks and techniques by talking to my peers and other painters and watching, tutorials and stuff. I was able to really level up, and now I don't mind painting yellow as much. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid. So this is kind of like that moment together where we're just going to figure it all out and we're going to make it work. Alright, so these little fingers carefully. And I think the other great thing is that I believe that we have next week to work on Magneto as well. So, hey. We got a couple of sessions to burn through this guy and make everything awesome and really exciting. And for those asking why which character when, some of it is just based on what works best from what a faction, or I shouldn't say faction, what an affiliation might need to fill it out. Sometimes it's based off of just exciting ideas that we have in the studio. There's so many different reasons of why, and it kind of always comes back to every character is somebody's favorite. I want to make sure that we try to get to everybody's favorite character eventually. So even if you might not be 100% on board with the order and the picks, it doesn't mean that we won't get there. That's the goal. But I think there's also that question of you do try to kind of hit the most iconic characters, even if they maybe aren't canonically the most obvious of choices. Where are the people crying for Wonder Man in the Avengers? I know Josh is out there, so he's already doing it, but yeah, the teams, the Marvel Universe is so cool because it's so wide and varied, and there's so much ground to cover that I don't think there's really a quintessential anything for anybody. And so we do our best to try to just, carve our way through and do things that we think are going to be awesome and compelling and exciting for as many people as possible, and we hope that's everybody. And if you're waiting on X, Y, or Z, our goal would... No, we're also probably waiting on X, Y, and Z. We have so many plans. Our schedule goes way far out, because there's just so many characters that we know we want to do that it becomes one of those things where it's okay, well, when do we get to this character? Well, when do we have an opportunity to get to this character? All right, well, I guess, 2040 is now booked. That's not true. We're not that far ahead. I suppose we could be, but we are very far ahead. So, as much as we can get to and as much of a hit as we can do, we do. And we kind of just accept the fact that unfortunately that's not going to be everyone's ideal. But ideally, when everybody gets a chance to, experience it and see it, they'll end in a place where they're going to be very happy and excited even if they're still waiting on whichever character is their absolute beloved favorite. I'm just going to leave that actually, so we're just going to leave that part of the cloak in shadow because it's in shadow. At the top of the helmet. Let's kind of work our way down. The main thing as far as like building, you know, MCP community and community in general on any game, it's different nowadays, for sure. Like the things that I would have told you could help, you know, a year ago are certainly things that may not make as much sense now. I think the big thing, you know, is like obviously giving people a chance to experience the game, any game, but especially MCP, can be a really powerful way to generate community. You know, the people know these characters. Everyone's been kind of inundated with Marvel or indoctrinated into Marvel in some shape or form now, thanks to all the awesome media that's happened and the success of the movies and the MCU and stuff. So step one is find opportunities to show people the game and get them excited about, you know, the chance to live out their superhero fantasies and dreams, right? Like that's I think the biggest compelling thing about any game, especially a miniatures game, is you now have this opportunity to come in and make your mark on something that you love in a way that's very personal and very passionate, and you get an awesome game out of it. And so demystifying the hobby is another big thing. You know, not everybody's going to have an immediate like positive, oh yeah, I get to paint it. But I think, as everybody here can certainly attest to, getting to paint your miniatures and make them your own and create a collection that nobody else in the world has is the most awesome part of what we do as hobbyists. And so demystifying that, pointing them to good resources, like showing them why that's so exciting, getting them amped to do the hobby and be like, nothing else will give you this, right? If you just want to play with X-Men or Marvel characters or whatever, I mean, there's kind of a lot of ways to do that these days between all of the different products and things, but there's nothing else out there that lets you take these characters and put your own mark on them, whether that's replicating comic traditional costumes, whether it's making your own costumes up, whether it's converting or anything, right? Like if you and I both paint Magneto in a white outfit, those two miniatures are going to be uniquely ours, even though they're trying to do the same thing. Like if we all paint our Cyclopses in blue and yellow, every blue and yellow Cyclops is going to be unique to the owner. And that's really powerful. I mean, I think that's one of the things that excites me the most about this hobby and has kept me going in it for, gosh, over almost 30 years now. I'm so old. Is that ownership. It's the fact that I can go to my collection, I can see things that I did artistically 20 years ago and say, okay, well, that's what I was doing then, this is what I'm doing now. Look how I've changed, look how I've grown, look how I've learned. And yet still go, well, that was mine. Nobody else has that. Nobody else gets to do that. And I think that's the power of, you know, what we're talking about here and what you get to do. So going back to painting for a second, I'm moving on and I'm just going to use my pure white sands. Again, I'm going to thin it out really good, and I'm just going to do another layer just to kind of brighten stuff up, and then we're going to move to our pure white, and that'll probably take us to our hour, but we'll be in a really good spot in terms of our white suit, and then next week we can come in and we can finish all the cool details and stuff. So again, demoing the game and not focusing on like the exactly how things work in play, but focusing on the feel, focusing on the experience. Like at the end of the day, the real gameplay is exciting and obviously a big part of the experience, but for somebody who's new to it, you just want to hit the beats, right? It's the movie trailer for the movie they're going to go watch. So sell them all, like show them all the exciting parts, show them the feel and the pacing, you know? A great action movie trailer is nothing like a great rom-com movie trailer. They're doing two very different things. And if you saw an action movie trailer and then you went to it and it was a rom-com, you'd be pretty upset. I mean, I can count on my fingers the number of times where I saw a trailer, was like, this movie looks amazing, and I went to it and it was not the movie that the trailer sold me. And every time, I've never ever walked out of those movies with like any kind of excitement or desire to watch them again. So, like, you know, show them the experience, give them the movie trailer of why this game is going to be awesome, and if they're interested, then you can start going a little deeper. But find those opportunities to kind of bring the community together. You know, there's so many great ways to do online. You might not be able to meet in a store for a paint night, but you can certainly do like a digital paint night. You can do what we're doing here, where we just hang out. Dallas and I are part of a couple of different online paint nights where we just hang out and we talk about what's going on, and we sit there and nobody really looks at the camera, but the camera's on, and we just kind of stare at our miniatures and we paint, and we talk about what we're painting and kind of what we're doing, and then we share photos and stuff of what we've worked on and where things are coming out, and it becomes a whole thing throughout the week where we're kind of able to connect on hobby and talk about our progress and stuff. That's really easy to do these days, which is pretty phenomenal, right? Like, think about when I started and how difficult it was to get engaged and find people in the community and the hobby, and now we have all these tools and resources, and while the game store will always be kind of the fundamental, I think, beating heart of the experience, it can remain that HQ, but in a new way. So that's really important, you know, get people together, give them a reason to like celebrate and be excited. Find those community touch points, you know, and start just a local page and have people show stuff off. Figure out ways to do get-togethers that everyone's comfortable with. Find locations, you know, whether it's like at a park when the weather's nicer, or somebody's garage, or whatever works for your area, you know. That's the other thing that's so challenging about now is, who knows? Based on where you live, everything's very different. So it's a lot of kind of like just figuring out generally what can be done. But at the end of the day, if you want to build community, well, excuse me, let me rephrase that. If you want to increase the number of people enjoying the game in your area, work on building the community. Bring people together. That's what tabletop's all about. I don't care what game you're playing, it's about the community around them. We do this stuff because we want to have meaningful, powerful social interaction with each other over a shared experience in a way that man, ladies, and people of all races, creeds, and religions have done for their entire existence. So building community around a shared interest, a shared hobby, it's a great thing, because then you have all of that, but you have to start somewhere. So start with, you know, bringing people in and giving them the opportunities to become invested and become excited and see that they're going to get to be a part of something that's really awesome and rewarding, and that will obviously take you very far in terms of building that out. So events, you know, demonstrations, all that stuff, giving people resources, showing them how to get connected, and not gatekeeping. Nothing will kill any of your chances faster than if you're like, well, you're X, Y, or Z, so this isn't for you. Screw that. This is for everybody. I don't have time to be building gates in this day and age. The only thing I have time for is tearing those gates down, because the more people that get involved, the better it is for everyone. And I think the MCU really showed people that. Like, the more people get involved, the more opportunity you have to really get in and experience the thing you love. There's no such thing as earning your stripes when it comes to fandom or anything like that. Like, outside of just knowing about it or loving it for an X number of extra years than the person who just found it, what made you any different when you found it? Like literally nothing. So, you know, I don't know. We're getting into weird philosophy now. Yeah, I mean, after school groups, that kind of stuff. Like when I was working in education, we had a great after school game club opportunity for our kids, and they could come and attend, and we taught them how to paint miniatures, we taught them how to play miniatures games, we introduced them all kinds of board games that were beyond the Milton Bradley norms, as it were. um, mentoring that next crop, that next group, is so important. It's getting people excited. You never know what a person's going to be passionate about, but if something's worth being passionate about to you, you can feel assured that it's worth that other people are going to feel that same way. So share that with them, make them feel welcomed, make them feel excited. Work with your local game store to like find opportunities, work together with them. Man, because I'll tell you, like, it breaks my heart every time, for whatever silly reason, the community and the game store come to an impasse and they don't work together, and it just winds up hurting everything else. So be allies, don't be antagonists. Like, everybody wants the same thing. Sometimes we want to get there in different ways, but use open communication and use that mutual respect that comes from, like, well, we're all aimed at the same goal. How do we just get there? And sometimes that's just a conversation, and sometimes it's compromise. But, like, even if the compromise isn't 100% what you want, if it's 60% of what you want, man, that's a great compromise. That's a great outcome. It's better than 0%. All right. Last but not least, we have 12 minutes left in my really weird TED Talk. Is we're going to go to pure white. Hiya. So this is our moment. This is our final step. Our blanco, our pure white. We're just going to use that, and we're going to go and do just a really powerful kind of edge spot highlight stuff. So again, this is just like, you're going to notice that I'm really just trying to like get just on kind of the very far edges. I'm not using this a lot because I don't want to overpower it, but the little bit that I use is really going to make this just kind of spark to life and look a lot like white. And again, this is where my blending brush is really going to come into it, because I want this to be kind of subtle, because I don't want it to overpower anything, but I want to get that hint of it being there. So you can hopefully kind of see how, as you like pop that in and you get this kind of pure white going on, that all that work we did before really starts to change and come to life in this nice, cool way. What other questions we got? We've answered, I think, everything that has been at the top of everybody's want to know list. We covered new affiliations, we covered the December break, covered there's cool stuff coming in December, some fun new ways to experience the game. I don't even know. How has this only been an hour? I don't even know what Dallas is going to do. I guess he's just going to have to paint Magneto. That's all right. That's what he does best. What will I be eating for dinner? You know, that's the question that I never have an answer to, honestly. C4 Darkmane. It's probably the one thing that's held back my marriage from being the happiest it possibly could be, is the question of what are we doing for dinner? Because nobody ever has an answer. It's always a last minute scramble. We did stir fry last night, so I know it won't be that. We had some delicious quinoa and red lentil tacos before that. See, now I'm just going to get hungry. Start talking about all this. So, we're just like, going back to our Magneto here, we're just kind of layering in this really bright highlight in places where it would kind of really like stick out. Back in and smoothing out our transitions a little bit with that extra brush. Doing some of those side abs, those rippling weird side muscles that comic book characters get all the time. Like their obliques turned into six packs. I don't even understand it. How is that even possible? Like, you know, the rarest of rares in the Marvel Universe, it's the bread maker. It's anybody who owns a bakery. How do you even survive in this comic book world of shredded abs? Ain't nobody going to that place. Nobody's getting cookies from Aunt Emma's Bakery and Goods. That's an awesome story. Thank you, Fergal? 1364. That's super awesome. Yeah, I had a similar experience. Like, I've been married to my wife for almost 20 years now, and she knew about my little man's hobby before I even got into it as like a profession, but she was never really that interested in it. And you know, it was part of like the goal with Crisis Protocol was to create something that everybody can enjoy, because you have super iconic and relatable characters, and you know, we try to approach every miniature with a fun to paint and build and assemble, and sometimes we get it really right, sometimes we don't get it as right as we want to, but in the end the goal is there. Like, we want people to be able to dive in and enjoy this hobby together and enjoy this awesome IP and do everything we can. So, oh, Simone's joined us. Hello, Simone. I haven't talked to you in like 5 minutes. So again, with this pure white, I'm just trying to like hit the very edges of the cape. And then if my line gets a little too thick, just kind of come in with that extra brush when I'm on camera. Whoops. And then just kind of blend it back out. So. We're getting feisty, Simone. That's what we're doing today. The Blob does get to eat all the carbs. He's like the only one, though. Him and Bertha, I guess, from the Great Lakes Avengers, right? Kingpin might get to eat carbs. I mean, he's some ridiculous amount of muscle mass, depending on which run you're running. I think my favorite one was like My body is 80% muscle mass. And I was like, woo! What about your internal organs, man? So, you know, that might be a carb-heavy diet. Might not be all the sweets, but he's certainly eating like an ox so he can be as strong as an ox. Alright. I think that I am pretty darn happy with where we ended up with this white. So obviously, again, this is not one of those that we're going to be able to knock out in an hour. But not every project is like that, unless you want it to be. And this is definitely the character that if we're going to spend 2 sessions on painting, Mr. Magneto deserves it. Not only is he huge in the game, he's huge in the world, and he's a great, I just think he's a great character. So let's give him that a little extra love and attention over this next couple of episodes. And we'll come back and we'll finish him off in all of his Marvel Now glory. Smoothen out that helmet a little bit. Let me go back to my previous color. This is the other thing too, if you keep your colors wet on the palette, when you notice that you've like made a little bit of a mistake or you want to go back and reshade something, you easily can do that. You can also go off camera like I'm doing right now because I'm like getting totally focused in. Alright, so 3 minutes left. Haha, I'm going to be totally on time. So there we are. Here is our start to our Marvel Now white suited Magneto. So next time when we come back, we'll do all of the striping and the boots. We'll come up with our color scheme there. We'll do the belt. And we'll knock out maybe some of that metal around him, or I'll do that before stream, depending on how close we want to get to him done. But hopefully you all had a great time. I look forward to hanging out with all of you folks next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to tune in to Dallas' stream this Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific. I believe that he'll probably be doing Magneto in classic color style, so if you want to do a more traditional Magneto with your own Magneto, be sure to check that out. You'll be able to see all of that good stuff. I can show you mine. Look how different I look. Ooh. So I already did a Magneto. I cheated. So I have my classic. Now I have my white Magneto to go next to him, so I can decide if I'm playing good or playing bad. I'll have both options taken care of. But I expect Dallas to be doing that. Maybe he'll do something completely different. He might do a pink Magneto. You never know what he's going to do. So with that said, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to tune back in 1 p.m. Pacific on Thursday for Dallas Kemp and his marvelous Magneto. And then, of course, join me again Tuesday, 1 p.m. Pacific to finish out this white-suited Magneto. Thank you all. You're wonderful. And go and be awesome. We'll talk to you later. Bye.